Coming to you live from a rose-tinted reverie of the past, it's this week's Apocalypse. I am your co-host and constantly lying to myself that there was once a better time than this, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is a man who is always looking back over his shoulder, but not necessarily at the past, John Ferris. John, how are you doing and feeling today?
I have a lot of enemies.
Yeah, you got to keep your eye out.
Yeah, well, actually, before we get into this, I might have to get a bit nostalgic about our last episode.
That's not very much in the past, but okay.
No, it's not, but I might have lied to you and our listeners.
Did you lie or did you make a mistake?
Well, I made a mistake. But that mistake turned into a lie.
This is a retraction, John? Is this what the newspapers
It's
would
me
call it?
being an absolute idiot and saying the wrong thing.
Ooh.
So when we were talking about 12 Angry Men,
yes,
I mentioned that for some reason I said that the camera goes up. The camera doesn't. The perspective goes up. Our perspective starts shifting, so we're looking up at the actors, but the camera actually goes down.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's because my brain only works at like a 5% max, really, and
that's not the worst of errors. I mean, you're not the Daily Mail apologizing for accusing someone of stealing someone's mega yacht and having an orgy on it or something like that.
I just had these visions. I've been having these like nightmares where, remember that scene in Annie Hall where like the guy in front of him in the cinema queue is like talking about a certain philosopher, and the philosopher like appears and goes, "You know nothing of my work." Yeah. I'm having that nightmare. Only it's Sidney Lumet.
Sidney Lumet's not going to appear and smite you.
Well, it'd need to appear from beyond the grave.
I know.
So, but I apologise anyway for anyone who was maybe at a dinner party and went, "Oh, little tidbit."
Here's the thing about 12 Angry Men, and then they were descended upon by the guests later after they watched it. They were like,
liar!
"Oh, Cobra went down, you liar."
But anyway,
that
aside,
that was a nice nostalgic reverie, John. Thank you very much for that.
We tripped down memory lane there.
It was beautiful. Yeah. So recently we just sort of we had a little sort of this is another one of our do a different thing episodes, I guess I'll call them now.
I got sick, basically. That's what happened. I got sick and then we couldn't record. So
yeah, John's head got weird in a way that would have been unpleasant in an audio format.
Yeah, you'd probably still be editing it at this point.
Indeed, yeah. Getting rid of the sniffles. Oh,
Sniffly bastard.
Yeah, I've got a filter for that all set up, don't you worry. Yeah, so what we thought we'd do today, we just noticed a trend. I was going to say in the last few years, but it's kind of been going on for the last 10 to 20 years.
Yes.
Would you say it was people preying on the nostalgia specifically of our generation of people who were born through the like late 70s and through the 80s? Yeah,
definitely, because you could say that, you know, the term like a nostalgic film or whatever, you know, you could use that for things like Stand By Me or Taika Waititi's Boy and things like that. Those are fine because that's like someone writing about their childhood and stuff like that. That is perfectly fine. Nostalgia can be used very well, and sometimes it makes sense to set something in the 80s or 90s for various reasons. But I think what we're really going to focus on is would you call it the cash grab, soulless raping of people's childhood?
I don't know if I would go so far as that's a little harsh. Cash grab is fair enough.
Yeah.
I think it's all about the money.
Yes, definitely.
It's all about slapping a new coat of paint.
It's that idea that like all these people that like, grew up with this are now in their 30s and 40s and have money to spend.
Yeah, which I don't know if these people are paying attention to the economy and the news and whatnot. But I haven't got a lot of money to spend on fucking Ghostbusters toys. But anyway, so it's more about... Wait, I would say I think the point where I first noticed this was happening to me was... Now, I've got to just check the year. But... when I first noticed this, and it made me feel actually sort of really uncomfortable, was when I was watching James Cameron's, directed by James Cameron himself, James Cameron's Terminator 3.
Oh, God, yeah.
Which is a fucking terrible film. It's just awful, and it's awful. It's not that it's... excuse me. It's not that it's like really badly made or something.
No.
It's that this concept almost give it life. You know, it's like it sprang... It's like they decided they were going to do Terminator 3. It feels like when you watch Terminator 3 that they didn't have any new ideas. Terminator 2 was a really clever way to follow up Terminator 3. And it, to be honest, it came years after Terminator 1.
Yeah.
Right? It was almost kind of like, let's bring back this old thing that was a cult hit that people like. And then Terminator 2 became like the biggest fucking movie that ever fucking happened. And I think maybe that's the thing that put them onto this in the first place. But they made Terminator 3, and Terminator 3 is just constant, endless, painful, sigh-inducing references to Terminator 2. Constantly. It's just like, there's even a point where they have the dumb joke where there's a part in Terminator where he like puts on the sunglasses to cover up his fucked up eye in the first one. In the second one, they have a bit where he gets the sunglasses and he puts them on all cool, like, and it's kind of just a wee callback to that.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But in the third one, they have this stupid moment where he picks up these Elton John pink star glasses and puts them on and looks, they basically mugs to the camera. And that's the point where I realized that I was being pandered to.
Yeah. I think that's it. I think it's the pandering is the problem. It's the, like, a lot of these movies, they have nothing to say. They've nothing to add. They've nothing like new. There's no new angle to approach these stories at, and or these characters, and in some cases where these are sequels. And I would say in about 90% of them, they couldn't stand on their own merit. Like, there's nothing to... I mean, one of the latest ones that I seen was Ghostbusters Afterlife, and that movie is just reference after reference. It might as well be showing you, like, just have cards with, like, the Ecto 1 on it going, do you remember that? And you're like, yes, yay. Do you remember that? Yes, yay. Look, there's a Twinkie. Remember the Twinkie?
Yeah. The Twinkie that was just used as an example. Yeah, by Egon Spengler to show be like, here's a size comparison, here's a ratio, and we'll not even get into, speaking of Egon, the raising the dead to capitalize on the originals. Like, that is just disgusting. That is. I do like to try and keep things positive more often than not. It's hard to. So the one thing I will say about that is, the CG was better than it has ever been when they've done that before. Because they did that in... was it Rogue One? They had a Peter Cushing that was a nightmare to look at. They also had... Didn't they have Princess Leia? Carrie Fisher. Yeah. They had a young Carrie Fisher in that as well that was convincing for about half a second. And then it's always when they smile. It's when they move or when they smile, it becomes a monster. Yeah. Now, the Harold Ramis looked like Harold Ramis. Yeah. I'll say that. But it was so unnecessary. And
it's funny that, like, bringing up Star Wars, there's another wee connection here, which I find is a major trend. I'm not a big Star Wars fan anyway. Like, I couldn't really give a shit. But there's a scene in that Ghostbusters movie where the young girl rings Ray, and Ray in the originals was always a bit of a goofy, like, you know, he's a lovable character. He's the one who goes, I hope Egon burns in hell or something. Like, wow, that is not Ray.
It's very inconsistent.
And in the Star Wars, like, there was numerous outcry. Some of it justified, most of it probably just
Angry nerds.
Yeah, angry nerds being doing what they do best. With their depiction of Luke Skywalker. And it's this whole thing of like these returning characters, which, I mean, when the original Ghostbusters appear in Afterlife, I was like, oh my God, you're so old. It's like,
guys, Bill Murray was just
they don't want to be there. They don't want to be there.
I was immediately reminded of a quote from Bill Murray where it was a long time ago, in probably the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s.
In a galaxy far away.
Yeah, whenever Dan Aykroyd had sent him a potential script for Ghostbusters 3, which he was on record as not being in favor of ever doing.
Yeah. Rightfully so.
And apparently, now this is one of these, apparently Bill Murray did this, and I believe all of these stories every time anyway. But apparently he sent him back the paper shredded with a little note on it that said, no one wants to watch 3 old men running around catching ghosts. Sorry, 4 old men running around catching ghosts.
Yeah.
Or chasing ghosts. And that was very apparent to me when they all appeared, standing in a line. And I was like, the only one of them who doesn't look like he's going to fall into bits is Ernie Hudson.
Yeah. And then
Ernie Hudson still seemed to have energy. And was like,
and there's a bit of an annoyance there because it's very well documented that Ernie Hudson kind of got screwed over in the original Ghostbusters. He was meant to be more of a major part, and when we covered Ghostbusters 2, we were saying like
when we covered the other bad Ghostbusters movie.
Oh, it's much better than this.
It's much better than this.
We're not even mentioning the 2016 one because that's a trash fire. But like they could have done. The Ghostbusters never had these child characters that you had to follow. It reminded me of this idea.
Children.
Yeah. It reminded me of this idea that they had in the Batman animated series, where like they got through like two or three seasons, and then some studio executive or whoever decided that they needed to focus more on Robin because children will identify with Robin. It's like, kids don't give a flying fuck about Robin.
No.
We want to watch Batman.
He's there to be imperiled and sometimes be a plot device.
And if you watch that old animated series is actually really good. A lot of episodes are really still stand up today.
Yeah, but moving. Yeah. Moving, I would say there's I don't know if it's
the best depiction of Mr. Freeze ever.
Absolutely, he's so good. That voice.
Yeah,
his voice. The guy that does his voice is brilliant. And like people died in that show.
Yeah,
you know, the villains would die. Batman never killed anyone because that's not his thing. But people would die. You know, and like there was
he just likes to maim them.
Yeah, he just beats people into unconsciousness, and then after that, who knows?
Which is probably worse, like, because they're in America, so like a lot of these guys probably can't afford health insurance. So it's a billionaire beating up these people who are just trying to make ends meet. Yeah,
that's terrible.
When you think about Batman too long, he's a horrible bastard.
Yeah, he's wreaking financial misery on the people of the lowest class, the criminal underclass.
Yeah.
Poor bastards. Oh, John, you just changed my opinion on Batman.
I'd love a movie that focuses more on that. Like, him being a big mental case who's just making things worse.
Yeah, but that show still holds up really well. And you don't need to like shift the focus to kids because kids liked Ghostbusters anyway.
Yeah.
One of the reasons was I feel like it was almost because it wasn't for kids.
Yeah.
And I knew when I was watching it, this isn't for kids. But it's so good, and I'm getting away with watching it because it's funny. I mean, I remember being absolutely terrified of the library ghost at the start of the first movie.
I think I was more frightened of the Ghostbusters cartoon at times. There's one where like there was like a demon chicken thing that Egon turned into at one stage, and that terrified me more than any of the movies. The movies were fairly lighthearted in comparison.
Yeah. I mean, there was a whole episode of the Ghostbusters, the real Ghostbusters, as it was called.
Oh, yes, of course.
To distinguish it from the weird other Ghostbusters cartoon with the big chimp. It was very strange. But there was an episode of that where there was a baseball game. They had to play a baseball game against all these dead baseball players from hell.
Yeah.
in order to save Winston's soul. Or Winston was going to be dragged to hell if they lose this baseball game, and that was sinister as hell.
Yeah.
And the ghost designs in it were like really disturbing a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah.
They were really strange and just like...
There's like a weird child snatcher one as well, where the children turned into it when they got caught. I vaguely remember that, but again, look at us all being nostalgic about our childhood cartoons.
Right
yeah,
this is what they want.
Yep.
But the problem is that they execute it so poorly a lot of the time, or cynically.
Yeah.
They do it cynically. Now, it has been done well. I'm going to admit that there are a few of these nostalgia shitty things that I have watched and been like, you know what? That was all right.
You're all right by me.
You're all right by me. You did a good job there. There's a bunch of them that are terrible. I mean, you want to talk about remakes? Remakes are... Like, I'm fine with someone remaking something if they have discovered, if they've thought of, no, there's a better way to do this, or this story could be told in a different way.
Yeah.
I am 100% behind that.
Definitely,
because
definitely.
if you weren't allowed to do that, we would never have gotten John Carpenter's The Thing.
John Carpenter. Exactly.
Which is a fantastic re-adaptation of something.
Just to go back to how I like. What I apologized to earlier, the 12 Angry Men is a remake of a teleplay. You know, the remakes can be done well, and sometimes you need to revisit something. Like sometimes you can change it. Like, as much as I don't think the 1997 remake of 12 Angry Men is as good as Sidney Lumet's, you know, they tried to do something different. They tried to modernize it, and I can appreciate that. And it's by no means terrible. It's just for me, it's just not as good as that one. But like
things like if you want to go back to like the 80s nostalgia,
RoboCop
didn't need a remake.
No,
nobody needed to remake RoboCop,
and they seemed to miss the point. There wasn't as much. You know, there was so much satire in RoboCop as there is in all of Verhoeven's kind of a lot of his stuff. Like, look at Starship Troopers, you know. Yeah,
it's 100% just satire on society and fascism.
Yeah, and like so many people missed the point of that and missed the point of RoboCop. Clearly.
Yeah, that's the whole point of. And then there was like, there's a whole thing that's been spurred on by the Marvel thing. And people have been like, right, well, try and blend that together. I mean, obviously the worst offender, not the worst offender, the most unsuccessful offender in that is probably Universal, trying to do their like Universal Monsters universe.
Oh god.
Which they were preying on a nostalgia that has long since died out.
Yeah.
But it's something I still kind of feel. I mean, I like those old Universal monster movies. I like the Invisible Man and the Wolfman and Dracula. You know, I Bela Lugosi is my Dracula in my head when I think of Dracula a lot of the time. It's between him and Christopher Lee mostly.
Yeah,
but Bela Lugosi
they just have
the
natural presence as well. You know, which helps.
But that thing fell so hard and flat on its face immediately. I mean, they had 2 false starts with it, and then I think they just didn't know what they wanted out of it.
Yeah, they seem to be approaching it the wrong way anyway. You know, they were trying to turn these horror icons into action adventure kind of movies, and it was just, what are you doing? Like you're kind of again, it's just these people missing the point of you know, and I mean that happens in so many of these things. You know, you now have these massive like franchises. You have Alien, you have Predator, you have Terminator, you have Die Hard, you have Jurassic Park. You know, you have all these like Rocky. Even, you know, you have all these. Then you've got like there's a new Scream coming out. There was a new Halloween there. You know, these things that just won't die.
Yeah, it's just having a weird sequel like 20 to 30 years after the last installment is so obviously just like this is gonna make money.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, but sometimes the problem is there's always a bloody exception. You know, you always get something and you go like, oh fuck, really? And then usually you're right.
Yeah.
You go, ugh, really? But every now and then they surprise me. Something like say Mad Max Fury Road.
Yes, yeah.
Which is one of the best action movies that I have ever seen. Straight up. It's just it's so well made.
They're usually the exception that proves the rule as well. They're like, you know, there's a lot of like external things happening with Mad Max Fury Road. You know, they got the original director and he really likes practical effects, and it was It seemed like almost like a passion project for him in a sense, or like, you know, he just wanted to kind of buck this trend of just everyone using CGI for everything. And yeah, it definitely helped. It definitely, like, that movie did stand out and does stand out.
Yeah, and I did like that Halloween, the 2018 one.
What was that now?
That was the one that was the sequel to
I've
the
lost
first one.
I've lost track of all of them.
That was the one that they just annoyingly called Halloween.
Yeah.
And
yes.
It was really, well, they should have called it Halloween 2, but they didn't because there was already a Halloween 2.
Yeah.
But there's already a Halloween and they didn't give a shit about that. So they just called it Halloween, and that was annoying. But it's fallen back into the shitty trap of just doing what the old ones did and recycling. Like, there's a sequel to that now, and that's fucking piss. I did like the Candyman one as well. It did the same thing where it called itself. It is a sequel. I know you didn't like it, but I kind of liked it. But it did that annoying thing where it called itself Candyman.
I'm called the same thing as the original. Try searching.
Which also was done by the prequel to The Thing. Yeah. That they just called The Thing. The one that had Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it. Yeah. And it was a prequel. It was set at the camp that they go to in The Thing.
And even things like that, like I expected that to be awful, and it was okay. It was a fine movie, but
I quite enjoyed it. But I came separated from my obsession.
Yeah, I kind of came out of it thinking though, but did it need to be made? Like, did it add anything? Like, no, I can't even remember a scene in it. You know, really, and it's that kind of thing where a lot of this stuff gets made. And it's either forgettable or it's bad or it's atrocious. Yeah. The new Matrix movie springs to mind for
which I have refused to watch up until now because I feel like I know exactly what I'm in for.
You don't. It is. I guarantee you, it is worse than you can possibly imagine.
Yeah. That's another weird one though, because that was one that was started as like a nostalgia hawk idea by the studio, and then was it Lana Wachowski is the director on it, or Lily?
Lana, I think.
Lana. So I think the way I hear it, what happened was the Village Roadshow Warner people were gonna make it. They were just like, we're gonna make another Matrix movie, and then she was like, no, don't, and they were like, we own the rights.
Yeah.
So we're going to make it. And she was like, well, if it's going to be made anyway, I at least want to be there.
Well, she did a terrible job.
Yeah.
Maybe she should have just let them get someone else in because it's bad.
Yeah, but I could understand that from like someone who's like made something. Like the perspective of like, this is my thing, and I don't want somebody else taking it. And
especially, I don't really rate them too highly. You know, apart from them, and it's literally one movie. You know, I do not like the Matrix sequels. No. They have done the Matrix and not much else that I think is good.
Yeah, like Cloud Atlas was a pile of garbage. Yeah. I hated that film.
It was so terrible.
Bad. Their V for Vendetta was so spotty.
Yeah,
there was little moments of light in the V for Vendetta movie.
It's watchable. That's like, I mean, I can say that about V for Vendetta. It's not like you know, I couldn't sit through this entire Matrix movie. It's like I almost kind of want you to see it to see how far you get, to see if your endurance was better than mine. Because
but my endurance is zero, John.
Yeah, well, there you go.
I can't even bring myself to go and get it and push the button.
I mean,
to make it go.
If you're talking about like terrible cash grab nostalgia, like they literally show parts of the original movie in that movie while you're watching it, and you know, they try to pass it off that it's the video game that he made or something, which is even more ridiculous.
Yeah, I heard about that. They couch it as if he's a game developer who made the Matrix trilogy as a game. Yeah.
It's all kinds of bad. I would honestly, you're doing the right thing. Just avoid it altogether because it's painful to watch. Yeah, this is all bad. They shouldn't have made that Ghostbusters movie. I don't know how well it did box office wise. But I hope they don't make another one. No, I really do think that this owes a lot of its success to the terrible 2016 all-female cast Ghostbuster thing.
Yeah.
Because that was terrible, and then I think what made it worse is like a lot of the people involved tried to pass anyone's criticism off as oh, you don't like it because you're misogynistic, and which isn't true. It's a bad movie.
Yeah. The problem with that is there was a whole bunch of people who were doing that as well.
You always get that. You
always get the scum who are just like who are just pissed off because there was a huge contingent of well, I'll say huge. I'll say a loud contingent.
I think
assholes.
That's it. It's never a huge contingent. It's just a loud.
It's just they're really loud, and it seems like there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And like that's always a problem with like extremist groups, as it were. They always seem like they're more numerous than they are because they're so loud and they're talking all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas people who have differing opinions are probably reasonable and don't go out there and scream constantly their opinions in people's faces.
Yeah.
So it seems like there are less reasonable people when really they're just living reasonably.
Yeah.
And they're not shouting in people's faces. So yeah, that was not a good film. Ghostbusters Afterlife, also not a good film. There's a couple of moments in it where I was like, oh, that's why I like Paul Rudd. I remember thinking that throughout the movie and thinking, yeah, I like Paul Rudd. I still like Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
You know, I remember being pleasantly surprised that he was able to carry me through at least.
It kind of annoyed me that, the end gives spoiler warning, I suppose. The after credit sequence gives this whole thing where Ernie Hudson goes into the old fire station, opens up, and is like, he's bought the place and all, and he's going to reopen the Ghostbusters. Yeah. And it made me just think, like, why not start this movie off like that with Paul Rudd?
That was the thing I was excited about, and I was like, that could be a really good TV show.
Yeah,
of Ernie Hudson trying to train a bunch of like yahoo new Ghostbusters who are just there, maybe have like an ironic thing like they're just there for the paycheck, like he originally was when he went for the job. So but he's trying to make them care about it or something in the way that like maybe you can have some like old man lessons of like, I found myself loving the job, blah blah blah. I just came in off the streets looking for a paycheck. I've already written the fucking pilot. There you go.
And it gives character motivation for him because this changed his life. He wants it for them. So fucking you can have the drama where like they're maybe not that into it and a bit have delinquents or something. I don't know.
Yeah, people from an underprivileged background, because he talks about that.
Yeah,
in one of the after credit sequences, and it feels like it's Ernie Hudson talking about being in the movie more than it is about Winston Zeddemore joining the Ghostbusters in this way, and that could be a really great thing to carry forward. I would love that, because that has worked a few times. There have been like, I find whenever they do this stuff, there's a few like TV shows that like, I like Cobra Kai. The second season was a bit of a wet fart. But everything else has been quite good. I don't like Ralph Macchio in it.
Yeah, he's not great.
Boring. But Billy Zabka is brilliant in it. Whenever it's following him around, it's great. As long as they as long as they choose the right perspective to go at it from, a TV show can be really good. Like Ash vs. Evil Dead is probably the one you would hold up and say, look how well they did this.
Yeah.
This thing that was like this thing that they haven't made a movie in this franchise for years, if you don't count the Evil Dead remake that was sort of didn't need to be an Evil Dead movie. I actually quite like that, but they shouldn't have called it Evil Dead.
Yeah, because it almost seems like one of the I don't know too much about it in that sense, but it almost seems like something that they'd had already kind of half made, and then they went slap this IP on it.
Maybe, but it feels like a better movie than that would imply.
Yeah.
But it's still like, they shouldn't have called it Evil Dead. But the Evil Dead, Ash vs. Evil Dead TV show is great.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Cobra Kai TV show, on average, taken as a whole, is pretty great.
I didn't enjoy it, but I know a lot of people did. To me, it felt very pandering at times. But
Oh, there's a few moments, like there's a whole thing again. I think it was the second season, maybe it was the third season, where they just go to Japan so they can put in the actors who were in the second Karate Kid movie that I don't think a lot of people really cared much for.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't even get that far with it. I enjoyed like the first 2 or 3 episodes, and then when it started to focus mainly on the teenagers, I was done.
It gets better.
I watched it, I think, to this the end of second season or something, but I have no interest.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones. Once I fell off, I was like, I'm not missing out.
Yeah, I got to the end of the second season and I wasn't sure if I was going to watch it anymore.
Yeah.
And then the first episode of the third season, I was like, oh, I'm so back on board. They had a really good fight that was like way better than anything that had happened in the second season. Like immediately, like the first like 5 minutes of the third season were better than the entirety of the second season. I was like, oh, they got to the end of that and realized they'd fucked up, and now they're scrambling to recover, and I think they recovered quite well.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So nostalgia can work, but it shouldn't be the focus of your thing.
No.
You know, you shouldn't just say, I'm going to put in all these different plot points that I need to put in, because, like, the last, like, 45 minutes of Ghostbusters Afterlife is the entirety of Ghostbusters plot point-wise.
Even the it's even the same antagonist. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, like, why did it need to be that?
Yeah, see,
like,
when you start that's the problem. When you start going down this avenue, you end up with more questions than answers.
Yeah,
I find.
And I don't want to sit here and become an annoying, whiny nerd about it. Even though that's what we've been doing for the last half an hour.
Yeah.
But goddamn, like, I mean...
And I mean, we haven't even talked about, like, there's certain things that are... You could almost say are original... Well, I wouldn't say original ideas. Original IPs, let's say. Like Ready Player One and that new Free Guy thing that had... I haven't seen it. I haven't seen either of them. But they're just riddled with... Like, especially Ready Player One, from what I understand, it is just 80s and 90s nostalgia is just thrown in.
Yeah.
As, like, that's the world that these people inhabit, is just
Yeah,
that.
I mean, that's the book that it's based on, is that 100%. Like, it is accurately based on the book.
I mean, if you look it up, it's just like Iron Giant is everywhere, and it's like, what the fuck is he doing there? Like, you know, he has no place in this like weird VR action adventure.
I mean, I certainly have affection for the Iron Giant.
Oh yes, yeah.
That's a beautiful film.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's weird that it's in there amongst this strange, directed by Steven Spielberg tribute. Yeah, almost that it is weird. It makes it really strange. But like, yeah, again, as far as like nostalgia goes, it tends to work best when it's someone's personal thing, rather than, oh, I'm going to try and evoke the tone of movies of a generation here, or like recycle, because like you get something like you were saying earlier, you mentioned Stand By Me,
yes,
and that is someone's reverie. That is literally, it is couched in the narrative of a writer, sitting in his study thinking about this time. He hears about, I think, is it a friend of his who's died or something?
Yes, yeah, I think that's what it starts with.
That reminds him of this guy.
Yeah.
It's like a newspaper article. He was like stabbed in a car park or something, and then he remembers this time when they were kids.
Yeah. And
then he just starts writing it, and then we go back and we see them in very rural America.
It's a good way to frame a story, but
yeah,
like a lot of these things just, it just hurts. It just hurts when you see. I'm not going to go. I'm not one of these people who like goes, oh, it was so bad it ruined my childhood. No, it didn't. Your childhood has happened already. You're a fucking idiot.
That's the other side of the coin.
What ruined your childhood was the fact that your parents didn't love you.
Oh, John, don't be so mean about this nebulous, faceless person you've conjured up. Stop it. Yeah, so that is the other side of the coin, is that someone making something new doesn't ruin the thing you already have.
Yeah.
It shouldn't. Now, there is another side to that, in that if they take away the thing, that's not okay. Like, there's a problem for me right now. The only way to get a proper cut of the original Star Wars trilogy is illegally. Someone went in and made those despecialized editions that you can go and like find on the internet and download, because it basically became impossible to buy Return of the Jedi or The Empire Strikes Back without friggin' extra CG Jawas basically everywhere, and like capering animals in the background, and that's a problem if you take that away, if you make that no longer available. But mostly that doesn't happen. Mostly it's like,
and it's so funny that, like, you know, it's well documented. Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, when they were younger, were part of that whole movement to like not let directors kind of alter their movies and things like that. You know, like things that like not to ruin things that already exist and are already beloved, and like I forget what it was called, but you know, then they turn into what it's a classic narrative structure. They turn into what they hated the most.
They become the villain. The thing from Batman, like if you're the hero if you live long enough, you become the villain or whatever. Because like, I mean, Spielberg did that with E.T. and like
Indiana Jones as well.
We are on record as not being big fans of E.T., both of us.
Maybe we'll come around someday.
Yeah, but he made it worse by going back and altering things and taking out like and doing like real like pandery things, like taking the guns out and replacing them with walkie-talkies, and taking out the word terrorist.
Hand shot first.
Indeed, hand shot first. That is so stupid.
No, it's
like
I think the thing.
The thing is a great film.
Star Wars. What annoys me about Star Wars, just in general.
Here, strap in for this one, lads.
Yeah,
this is like the start of every awful forum post ever. You know what annoys me about Star Wars?
Like, I don't mind the original 3 movies were grand. I can watch them and blah blah blah. I'm not a massive fan, as I said earlier. But with every iteration, with every like new movie or TV series, whatever, like there's Book of Boba Fett and all this kind of garbage.
I've heard bad things about that.
Everything that seems to be added to this universe that they created makes it so much smaller. It now feels like Star Wars exists on the same street. It's like fucking Coronation Street or something, like, because everyone knows each other. Han Solo, like, he basically, his backstory now has been told, so he's linked with all these other characters, and it's like, how, like, when you first kind of watch that very first Star Wars, A New Hope, it feels like, oh my god, there could be any number of planets and species, and it's amazing. Huge. That's great.
It's huge. Even the central concept is about things being massive.
Yeah.
The Death Star, the point where they're flying along and they have that great moment that everyone's quoted ever, but where they're just like, oh, it's flying towards that
moon,
small moon, and then he says, that's no moon, that's a space station, and they hove in on it. And like, I remember as a kid being really overwhelmed by the idea that this big structure that's been built, that's floating in space, that's the size of the moon, floating around and destroys planets, is terrifying.
Yeah.
And like, even that is a grand scale, and like, nobody knows each other, and they're all strangers all coming together to fight this foe, and blah blah blah. And then like, it's vaguely tied together with the Force guiding people, which sort of lets them be like destiny and all that stuff, and that's fine. But that pudding gets over-egged and over-egged and over-egged to the point where you're just like, I mean, they did it in the trilogy, the point where they're like, oh, well, Leia is his sister. And you're like, okay, right. And then the point where Darth Vader's his father. And you're like, yeah, it's even then it was shrinking.
Yeah.
But
with every iteration, it shrinks more and more.
Yeah. But the fact that it stopped there.
Yeah.
You know, there was that trilogy, but then they went on and they were like, oh no, guess what? This person's related to this person.
Turns out Han Solo was Boba Fett's roommate, and Darth Vader was the landlord.
You know, literally, Darth Vader built C-3PO is the stupidest fucking fact from the Star Wars universe ever. It's so useless, pointless. It didn't it's so unnecessary and strange.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like they had to find a way they could have just been in it somewhere else doing something, but no, they had to literally be built. So fuck that shit. And then they just go back and they change and they change and they change and they change, and that's, you know what? Maybe that's what we'll do, John. Maybe in 30 years time we'll come back and we'll put a bunch of CG into this episode. We'll put some Jawas in the background and an extra walker here and there, and we'll replace all our guns with I don't know, peperamis.
Yeah. Ooh.
How about that? Yeah, Slim Jims as the Americans call them.
Tastier version.
Indeed, and we'll eat our guns, and it will be delicious, and we'll be happy, John.
Finally.
Maybe finally, and that's the crux of it, isn't it, John? Isn't it? That's really the thing they want you to chase.
Yeah.
Maybe now when I see this,
Yeah.
I'll be happy. How cynical. Well, I'm happy already, so I don't need that stuff. Hooray!
Yeah.
So we are on Twitter.
Always look forward.
Always look forward.
Don't look back.
Don't look back. We are on Twitter. We are at 7 Day Apocalypse. That is at numeral 7 Day Apocalypse. You can email us on filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. That's filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. Look out in the future for this episode special edition. I'm sure it will be, you know, as I say, John,
15,000 Jawas.